Hello, and welcome to Our Spirited Life. We're here to engage and inspire you, and my guests share how they have created a truly successful and spirited life and their journey to reaching this. Listen to the very end for some top tips and a fabulous music choice. A warm welcome to this week's issue, where I'm really delighted to introduce Andrew Stotter-Brooks, otherwise known as Stotts. And you can tell us how that came about later. With over 35 years of experience in learning development, Stotts is a passionate, in fact, award-winning professional who helps people and organizations achieve their full potential. He's the chief learner at ADNOC and Weird Human, a company that shows the extraordinary in each of us through innovative, enjoyable, and impactful learning solutions. Fantastic, Stotts. Welcome to Our Spirited Life. We're speaking online. I'm in Cheltenham. So first, please tell us, where in the world are you?
I'm on an island in Abu Dhabi,
Oh,
which is just part of the beautiful United Arab Emirates. I live in one of the Emirates, the largest emirate, which is Abu Dhabi, about an hour drive from Dubai. And more people are familiar. But the interesting thing about Abu Dhabi is that if you do your TripAdvisor on the top 10 things to do in Dubai, nine of them are actually in Abu Dhabi. Um,
oh.
and and the other one is actually named after Abu Dhabi, which is Burj Khalifa. So it's quite fascinating. Yeah.
So how come you're living on an island in...
Abu Dhabi has. We live in. There's a place called Yas Island, and it's becoming a bit of a tourist kind of like mecca now.
Okay.
We are very, very privileged, and also the organs. I work in oil and gas. So ADNOC is an oil and gas company, and we basically, obviously, most of the oil and gas in the United Arab Emirates is actually based in Abu Dhabi. So
Okay.
and I work in their head office in Abu Dhabi, which is obviously in that place.
Yes. And tell us what ADNOC stands for, please.
So it's the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company.
Okay.
Abu
Okay.
Dhabi National Oil Company, yeah.
Okay.
And we basically we manage kind of obviously everything kind of upstream and downstream. A lot of the kind of like the crack of oil. So we obviously are a major producer of oil, and then obviously all the crack and the refining of oil. So pretty
Mm,
much obviously things that the obvious is like electricity and gas in our cars, but
mm,
also things like
mm.
carbon black, less familiar. So carbon black is what makes the blackness of televisions and computers. So people
Oh
watching
my God. Okay.
about
Wow.
80% of the world's carbon black comes out of Abu Dhabi. So if you drive a
I,
BMW or a Mercedes, or you have a television from Samsung, you
yeah.
probably have a bit of Abu Dhabi in your kind of like in your house.
Good heavens. Never knew that. Never knew that. I'm sure a lot of our audience won't either. Um, how did you actually begin in the world of, as you say, your talent? I love the fact that actually you say talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not. You've had an amazing career in leadership development, talent management, organizational performance, and facilitation skills. How did the first opportunity come to you, or did you create it?
I think it was luck. The early part of my career was in hotels and restaurants. So I was running, well, I learned to run, and then I did run very large hotels and very, very large restaurants. We were serving 10,000 meals a day in some of our restaurants, and we were basically running 1,000 bedroom hotels. So very big hospitality. My daughter was born, Georgia. That was 28 years ago now. Um,
Mm.
and when my daughter was born, I wanted to take a bit of a slightly different career direction. So I was working primarily operations, hotel general manager, big restaurant general managers.
And is that in the Middle East? Stotts, can you speak up a bit,
Yes,
please?
of course. Yeah, of course
Oh,
I can.
that's better. That's better.
Yes,
Come closer.
closer, come closer.
And
No,
so, was Georgia born in the UK or in the Middle East? Were you already in the Middle East by this
no, she was
time?
she was born in the UK. I originally was offered a job to run a big kind of country park in the UK, and when I originally started there, on my first day, the owner of the organisation gave me some fairly devastating news, which was that I didn't have a job anymore because the incumbent didn't want to move on. But then he's a very nice Dutch guy, and he had a plan, and that plan was effectively that he would make me head of learning. So my first thought about this was that I I had no experience in doing that, but as a kind of a father of a new child, I felt that I probably should just kind of try and stick it out while I could find alternative employment.
Yeah.
And then literally, 28 years later, I kind of find myself here. So I've been on a bit of a world tour, really. So we worked with them for about 7 years. I went back into Hilton International as their head of learning, did that for another 7 years. I joined the Merchant Navy, went to sea. So I
Oh,
kind of traveled around the world, teaching people in that kind of that piece of the world. And then because I had then a lot of exposure to some of the Middle Eastern cultures, and definitely some of the guys who support the Middle Eastern cultures. That was interesting. So that then drew me into initially Kuwait. Spent quite a lot of time working in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and then 7 years ago, I had an opportunity to come and join Etihad Aviation Group. So worked with Etihad as their head of learning for about 5 years, and then about 2 years ago, ADNOC gave me the great privilege of working with them. So I then came to ADNOC. So it's a bit of quite quite an eclectic journey.
yes, it has been because one of your works was responsible for the field of education and development of 53,000 team members across the Middle East and North Africa in over 90 world-class retail. I mean, it's astonishing career. How do you look after 53,000 people when you're in learning? I know
I,
you
I
have a team, but
No, I think there's I always say there's five things. I always say
yeah,
that, and I've been kind of honing those five things now for a number of years. I think the first thing is clarity. I think people
clarity,
they
yes,
need clarity and direction. So I think a big part of my life is creating the clarity that people need. Um,
yeah,
Also, the second part of it is really about how we help people understand how well they're doing. I think people
mm,
typically like to know how they're doing. So we work a
mm,
lot around frameworking and performance. So the
mm,
second part really is feedback. So we're giving people either saying, "Great job, Susie," or perhaps you might want to do a bit more work in this particular area here. So
mm,
we provide clarity, we provide feedback. I think probably one of the most important things, and I'm frequently telling this story, but it's about what I would call input versus output. So therefore, it's about helping people understand the role they play within organisations. I think
yeah,
that's critical. So you have to help people understand how they fit. I think many employees in many organisations, one of the things that I get most upset about when I'm meeting people is that they say I'm a, the word I would use is I'm a juster. So they say I'm just a
oh,
reader.
yes. Oh, it's only me.
It's only me.
Yes.
So
Oh,
yeah, it's that
mm,
frustrating.
mm,
So
mm,
no one's a juster. No one's everyone who doesn't matter what role you play within an organisation. It doesn't matter if there's 90,000 employees or 100,000 or 50,000 or
mm,
whatever it is.
mm,
All of those are critical. They're critical. People put
yeah,
them
I
into
love that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So we've got clarity, we've got feedback, and we've got input versus output. And then number four for me is that people have a desperate passion to learn. So it's really engaging that, and we can explore that in more detail. But then the fifth one for me is just caring. So I've always
Yes.
been a very I like to pride myself on being very caring, very authentic in the way that I
Mm, mm.
do.
You are caring, and in our written correspondence, one feels that you are interested and that you want to help and that you do very much care. And I think, and also like you, I believe that learning is for life,
Yeah.
and life throws at us opportunities for learning, whether they're pleasant ones or not. And so, has your, I mean, hardly anybody's life, if anybody's, is plain sailing. Has your life thrown up opportunities, and how has, because I love the word resilience. I'm all about resilience. And also humor, and you have a great sense of humor. So how has resilience and humor, how have they played a part in seeing you through some difficult, challenging times? And has that impacted on how you um, interact with people?
I think it's really, for me, it's about failing fast and being comfortable failing. I think that's really, really important. And also, I think it's one of the most important skills. I talk about kind of being quite gritty and then being resilient. And I think, from my perspective, you don't really become gritty or resilient without a large dollop of failure. So, and
Yes.
I think that's very important. So it's how quickly you can recover from failure. I'm not immune to kind of self pity, but I think we have to be kind of realistic, and often things go wrong. I mean, I think I probably make more mistakes than the average human, but I'm comfortable doing that. So I feel I'm a bit of a pioneer. I'm constantly
Mm,
pushing.
mm,
It's
mm,
almost not so much what I get away with, but I'm very very keen to see how much more I can achieve. And I said,
mm.
well, it doesn't quite work out for me. I do a lot of I kind of juggle. Or used to juggle chainsaws, and I juggle. I'm a fairly prolific juggler.
What?
Oh, a long time ago, long boring story. But I'm a very competent juggler. Let's put it that way. And it's often I do a lot of juggling, and I do a lot of. I've taught tens of thousands of people to juggle in my career, and it literally is tens of thousands. But it's always the same situation, because when I teach people to juggle, I like most things in life, juggling is a recipe. So I'm a big believer in following simple recipes, simple rules
Mhm.
tend to work for me. And I have a whole recipe book of rules that really help me to perform my jobs. But when you're teaching people to juggle, we tend to have learned experiences, and those learned experiences become kind of laid down, and they're quite hard to change. So
Mm,
we get stuck in ruts. So there's a juggling is a it's a bit of an illusion, really. It requires unlearning something to learn something new, which is quite
yeah.
difficult. But often
Okay.
when you're trying to teach people to juggle, they quickly like to blame. They say, well, I've never been good at balls. I'm not very coordinated, or I'm too
Mm,
old, or I'm too
mm,
young, or
mm,
I've
mm,
never really had any exposure to this. People like to make excuses,
mm,
and I think also the what people love to hear is that they're not responsible. So I think
mm,
sometimes if I say, "Oh, Susie, it's not your fault," you know,
mm,
I,
mm,
that is, people love to hear that, because they just
mm,
love to be able to hide behind that. So
mm.
all the time I hear that, oh, I'm too old, too young, wrong nationality, wrong culture, wrong age, whatever it is. But actually, it's not really about that. It's about how willing you are to have a go, and how willing you are to
Yeah,
learn.
yeah, yeah. And how willing you are to fail and use it as a learning opportunity. I know you've had Doug on the Strategic on the your podcast because, as you know, I'm a partner with AQR International with the
Yeah.
mental toughness, and one of those things is seeing failure as a learning opportunity. And you talk about being, I'm not responsible. It's about being response-able, being able to respond to whatever life throws at you. And some of us have had a very interesting life, but I always see it as that I don't do an organized religion. So I see it as the universe bringing me these experiences to put into my pot of how I can then help other people. And for me, it's in the very specific role of enabling and encouraging and helping women to believe in themselves, to step into their inner power and stay there, and to practice all the things around the self, including self-love, which I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but many British women, I think, find that very difficult. One woman even said she felt it was arrogant to love herself. But we have to do that in able to, how can you expect anybody else to respect you if you don't respect yourself, or love you if you don't love yourself? And you can love yourself in different ways. It's not, oh my God, aren't I beautiful? It's, I am worthy. I have value. I belong. I can do this. And so, um, I don't, I want to rewind a bit. Or did you want to say something about
I
that?
think I think we're all our biggest critic. I think we're
Yeah.
all our biggest critic. When I was a young man, 400 years ago, my father kind of like taught me there were kind of four rules, and I think those you probably heard me say this before, Susie, but I would say, he always said, Andrew, we lead with respect. We're very respectful. We don't. No one has to earn our respect. We give it freely. There's no kind of
Mm,
like contract. It's just free of charge.
mm,
Um, I think we need to be good at, we hear people, so people need to be heard. So
mm,
you need to be really good at listening. They need to be acknowledged. I think that's really important. It's amazing how few people feel heard, respected, and acknowledged.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
but also, we need to be remembering about people, and I think that's such a huge it's such a huge, powerful tool. If we remember about people, it makes a big difference. Makes it
And it
much more.
makes them feel, helps them feel valued and important.
It
And
does.
who doesn't want to feel that? You mentioned being a young man, and that was brilliant because I want to rewind back to when you were a young man. Were you an enthusiastic school learner, you know, and did you go to university, which enabled you to then go into these jobs? How did it all begin?
I'm kind of God, how do I describe myself? Yes, that's so. The answer is no. I didn't really enjoy school. I definitely wasn't a. I was I was a loyal, reliable, conscientious student. Um, I don't think that the way that I was educated was particularly useful for me.
Hmm.
So when I left school with no qualifications at all. I basically came out of school with nothing, um, which I think was I was a great at that moment in my life, probably a great disappointment to both my parents. But I didn't, although I was turning up and I was reliable going into school, didn't really get any qualifications at the beginning of my career, and it was. I suppose when I started my career, I learned a couple of lessons on my first day of employment. So I managed to get a job. I come from the seaside, so from Dorset. I'm from Poole in Dorset. So I
Oh,
managed to
right.
so I managed to get a job in a hotel.
Mm.
The only job that would basically didn't require any kind of qualifications or experience, which was dishwashing. So I started
Okay.
on my first day, and then there was the hotel general manager was a lady called Yvonne Johnson. She's obviously passed away now because she was in her 60s when I was in my me in my young teens. So I started. So the first day, she was walking past I didn't know who this woman was really, but she was obviously very smart and very efficient. She was walking past where I was working in the dishwashing area, and she stopped and she said to me, Andrew, I think you're possibly the best washer up we've ever employed. Yeah. And I suppose and I was quite surprised by that, but I just wanted to apply myself to that task.
Yes.
And obviously the washing up area was spotlessly clean. There was not one single plate that required washing. Everything was tidy. I was smiling. I was enthusiastic. It was my first
Yeah.
day. But
Yeah.
but she said actually, she said, she asked me a couple. She said, have you got a black pair of trousers, a white shirt, and a black bow tie? And I said, I have a black pair of trousers and a white shirt because I'm just thinking that's my school uniform, but I don't have a black bow tie. But I said I can go and I will get a black bow
Get
tie.
one. Yeah.
And she said, can you become? I want to make you a waiter. So on my first day of work, literally my first day of work, I was then promoted to become the dizzy heights of being a waiter. Um, so that's really how it started for me. I kind of worked out that was the first lesson. Is like hard work is. I think sometimes talent is squandered with people who aren't prepared to work hard. So I think if you're
Mm,
working hard, even if you haven't got much talent,
mm,
obviously if you
mm,
have and you
mm.
work hard, it's an unstoppable force.
I love this because it just goes to show that hard work, enthusiasm, application, you can. So when you say that talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not, you had that because of how you were working and showing enthusiasm and and diligence, she spotted that. So do you think that was the luck that in that? But there's preparedness. What's the saying? Luck is opportunity meeting preparedness or something like that.
Yes,
So
I think there's definitely that, Susie. You have to be again. You have to because a lot of people would have just said. I think a lot of people would have said, I don't think I can be a waiter." You know, but I think you have to often. When I can't believe it because I was listening to a podcast the other day with Chris Hatton and it was amazing. And they were asking him at the end of his stellar career, Chancellor of
with
Oxford.
whom? With who?
Is it
Stotts?
Chris Patton?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, amazing. He was the
Hong
last
Kong.
Hong Kong and Chancellor of Oxford and Chairman of the BBC and all that
Mm,
kind of stuff. And they asked him a question, and they said, if they asked if we took you back to when you were like 15 or 16 and
mm,
told you that this would be your career,
mm,
would you have been happy with that? And he was like, "Oh, yeah, of course." But honestly, I was thinking, I played it onto myself, and I said,
mm.
"Gosh, if you'd asked me that question." When I was 16 and I am where I am now, I would have just found that impossible to comprehend
Yeah,
to where
yeah.
I am now but it's literally it's hard work. But I think the other secret if I can be so bold, is, and I think I learned that on my second day of work, and that is really giving people what they need.
I was going to say, you went from dishwashing behind the scenes into people skills, into being around people. Would you say that you are a natural? I mean, I love people and so if you love people and you're interested in them, then you're going to be a people person. I would say that you're a people person. So when you went out as a waiter, were you naturally good with your customers?
It was, I think it was simply mathematics. I mean, I was being, my salary, again, it was, 400 years ago. So it's a long, they were paying me £4 a week. So £4 sterling was my salary, my take home.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't earning very much money. But what I realized very quickly is that, in hotels and restaurants, there's this called gratuity, there's tips.
Yes.
And I kind of quickly worked out that if you gave people what they needed, they would give you what you wanted, which was money. So
Yeah.
often when I was working a shift, I could easily be taking, sounds crazy now, but maybe £100 in tips.
Wow.
So I could be earning, my weekly salary was only £4, but my gratuity, my tips, and it was
Mm,
cash, it was hard cash.
mm, mm,
So,
mm,
and I kind of quickly equated being nice to people to them giving me money.
mm, mm.
So there was a real motivation. I don't think it's about money and motivation are a very complicated equation, but I do think that actually I personally learned from that if I was nice, there was some reward to that. And it was quite
Yeah, yeah. But I think there's also a certain thing about authenticity. If you'll get spotted if you're pretending to be nice. You've just raised your hand, and I'm quite fascinated by the kind of I did a series called, and I want to revisit it, called The Woman Within. And
yeah.
I interviewed, oh my God, one of the top models of the time. Her name, Caprice.
Oh wow,
And
amazing,
I want, what?
amazing, amazing.
Yeah, we went up to her house her place in Westminster, which used to be a club, and her dining table was up on what used to be the stage where the Stones had played and everything. She was lovely. I've got a picture of her with me holding one of my Women of Spirit books. She loved the interview because I wanted to find out the woman within, not so much about her glittering career, but her and how she had done that. And I guess in a way, that's what this podcast is about. Now, I just saw your wrist there, and you've got lots of, look at those. I mean, now you see, I, having been brought up to be a very good girl and gone to a very strict school, which I absolutely hated, and sort of putting people, corporate people in a sort of visual pigeonhole of besuited and booted. But you are so not like that. So and I guess you don't have to be, because what matters is how you are around those people, how you are relating to them and with them, and how you are teaching them and enabling them to learn. And so your style is a great style. And you told me before we started recording that your jacket is because there's a party there happening later today. So
We have a bit of a. We were told that the kind of dress code was a bit more sparkly today. Yeah, so hence,
sparkly, certainly sparkly. So
yeah,
tell me about the bracelets, Stotts, and do you wear those all the time? Because it's
we
quite
never leave.
hot where you are. So
They're permanently on, and I actually have them on other on my legs as well. So I actually, so I'm quite a they're just, they're kind of memories really. They're just wherever I tend to go. I tend to, like, people, obviously people give them to me,
yeah,
but they're sort of memories really. They're sort of thank yous. But it's interesting what you were saying, because I think it's just, for me, it's taking those two lessons I learned when I was sort of 15, 16. And the first lesson was literally there's no substitution for hard work, and the second lesson was just giving people what they need. So if you understand what people's needs are,
mm,
again, they need to be respected, they need to be heard, they need to be acknowledged, they need to be remembered. If you do those things well, you give them a bit of clarity. It's
mm,
connecting. I think we also have, everyone does. I think there's arguably about 8.9 billion human beings on the planet. I think
mm,
we're all unique. We're all extraordinary. And I think majoring on the power, I mean, I don't like this word soft skills. I like the word power skills. And I think because they are really important, I've been a real student of the power skills. So it's listening, it's asking questions, it's,
Mm,
emotional intelligence, making
mm,
myself aware of who I am,
mm,
recognizing different people's emotions. Those
mm,
things are
mm,
they're interesting skills, and they will
mm.
definitely serve me, and they will definitely serve humanity in the future.
Yes, yes.
I think
I think that's the thing, is to understand who we are as an individual, and then how to serve ourselves so that we can serve others
yeah.
better. And I love also that you say that your mission is to help people be brilliant and to make learning fun, engaging, and meaningful. So just to rewind a little bit, how did Weird Human come about?
Weird human is an interesting one because it's I before E except after C, right? And of course, therefore, weird, because weird is weird not only in the spelling of weird, but also in the word of weird. So weird
Mm,
really is just trying to, I suppose, again, it's back to my kind of my own sort of failed education, because I I think people don't, not everyone learns the same way. So some people
yeah.
like, some people enjoy that, but it has to be fun. I had 80 members of the kind of royal family with me this week. And they're sort of like, they're all kind of like, princelings and princesslings.
Hmm.
Um, they're quite, they're under 20, let's put it that way.
Mm,
But they're very, very, amazing people, but they need to be engaged. And they were
mm,
talking to me after, and they were saying, "Crikey, we've been moving around, and they don't come across people like you, Andrew, very often." And
mhm,
your ability to hold them as an audience and actually engage them and get them
mm,
really thinking, get them
mm,
active is amazing. Because
mm.
normally, some of their guardians who are with them were saying, "Gosh, it's quite hard because they're kind of glued to their phones. They're not paying attention. They're very easily distracted, and so to
Mm,
actually be able to hold them for about 6 hours, and
mm,
actually get them focused and aligned and listening
mm,
to you,
mm.
that's quite a skill. But I think it's down to, again, it's just being able to keep it focusing and help people learn the way that they want to learn is
So
important.
what were they, they were sent to you in order to learn anything specific, or is it a one-off, or?
They were sent to learn a little bit about the oil and gas sector, the oil and
Hmm.
gas business, and they were sent to understand more about, perhaps, because they are naturally leaders. They're born into leadership. So
Mm,
they were sent to me really around understanding a little bit about the oil and gas sector, and the oil and gas business, which is fascinating. And they were sent to me to really try and understand a little bit more about how they build rapport and how they can
mm,
basically,
mm,
lead people. They're
mm,
still a little bit young for, obviously, for direct leadership, but
mm.
they will go to university around the world and they will come back. But it's just about kind of broadening their experience and their knowledge. That was
And
what.
just out of interest, how many princelings and how many princesslings were there? What was the ratio?
It was about 50-50.
Oh, great. I like that.
Yeah, about 50-50. So there was, just over 80 in total.
Mm.
If anything, I'd probably say
Sorry, 80 or one?
80. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
probably slightly more in favour of ladies, princesslings. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
So it's a very interesting group. We've been posting pictures today because they were asking me to post some pictures, and particularly this jacket today has caused a bit of hilarity, amongst my Emirati friends. Yeah,
mm.
I'm not sure I look like a
And
cowboy, but they think I look like a cowboy. I'm not sure a cowboy would wear this outfit. I don't know.
no, no. We watched the documentary on Prince a few nights ago, and it's
Wow.
kind of the sort of thing a rock star would wear, I think,
I'll own
on
that.
stage.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll take that. Yeah. So, a question: if you suddenly found £1 million in your pocket, who would you give it to and why?
I'd probably give it to my children, because I would want them to just not to. I want to take the pressure off them a little bit. Uh,
Mm,
I think we all
snap.
have, yeah, because I think we all have a lot of pressure
Mm, mm,
on our shoulders, and it's. I think life is pretty intense, and I
mm,
think life is very intense these days because of social media. I know
mm,
crazy. But I just feel that so many, there's this sort of kind of fakery around social media.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't know about you. I mean, even this morning when I was, people want, I don't know why, but they want to take pictures with me. I'm always really cool with having a photo. That's fine. But it's other people seem to want to have 7 or 8 pictures, because they obviously, I suppose we all do it, but we all look at ourselves in the photo and say, oh no, it's not good in the photo.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't really bother too much about that kind of stuff. But I find it amazing where once upon a time we'd taken a photo, we couldn't see it for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'd see it and it was gone. But
mm,
now, every picture we take, there's like
mm,
20 or 30 photos, right?
mm,
And
mm,
then,
mm,
people are deleting it. So
mm.
we're almost putting this very peculiar view of the world, and we're then projecting that out. And of course, other
Yeah,
people are seeing that, and I don't
yeah,
think we're quite like we pretend we are. So
yeah.
I try to be very authentic. I try to be really, I'm me. I'm very comfortable being
Mm,
who I am.
mm, mm.
So
And I think that's great because it comes across. And, as we get older, perhaps it's much easier to be settled and self-accepting. Well, I say that but women actually, this is one of the things because it is as we get more mature, over 50, a woman's confidence drops hugely. But then, of course, a lot is going on in her life. But that's another story. I have another question. Do you have a favorite book and why?
what
And what is it?
I'm going to go with, yes, C.S. Forrester. Um, so I love Hornblower. I find it absolutely amazing. Mostly, I've read that series. I think there's 7 books in the series,
Mm.
in the Hornblower, and I would strongly recommend anyone, particularly anyone who's a student of leadership, to read those books
Oh, okay.
because it's so
Great tip.
gritty. It's just very, very gritty. Um,
Yes.
it's very real, because you're inside the mind of Hornblower, and obviously his career is quite interesting because he goes from being a kind of midshipman to being like an admiral of the fleet. But
Mm.
it's the self. What I love about it is the self doubt. So right the way through his kind of career, it's that constant self doubt, which I think most of us have. We all have that kind of
Mm.
self doubt. So
Mm.
it's really about really, yeah, people have that.
Would you say
We
it's now in the sort of corporate world, it's called imposter syndrome? Similar?
oh yeah, raging. I have, well, personally, I have raging imposter syndrome anyway. So
Okay.
I was joking the other day actually with one of my senior leaders that they're going to one day someone will find me out. But I'm 50. I'm almost 59 now, so it's a bit late in the day if they do
It's a
find me
bit late. I think you're doing all right, Dot. I think you're doing okay.
out. They're going to find someone's going to find me out one day, and then it'll be all over. But it's a bit. But
Uh,
it's okay. I've got away with it for 59 years.
Yeah. What's it like for your family to have sort of been so long in the Middle East and away from their natural home country?
I think they love it. I think both my children work here. My children are
Mhm.
grown up now, so they both
Mm.
have. My daughter's married. My son is not married but in a relationship, and they both live and work in the UAE. So we're actually very, very lucky. My
Mm.
wife's retired a few years ago now,
I
so
was
she
going
has.
to ask, has she been able to have a career out there?
Yeah, she was amazing. She was a teacher, and then she was like, it was a bit of a joke, but she was a mum, so she looked after 38 schools, and a bit of a mate. I suppose matron is probably quite a good word actually. So she had a very interesting job. She went for a time recruiting teachers into the Middle East, so that was a big
Mhm.
part of her life. Obviously as an educator as well, and
Is this
then
for expat schools?
expat schools, yeah, and then of course
Yeah.
the latter part of her career, she was um, she became like a matron, really, a mother, because she was bringing in lots of young teachers into the region. Change is really hard, and bringing them into different
Mm.
cultures is quite challenging. So
Mm.
the school kind of appointed her as this kind of like this sort of matriarch, this kind of this mother figure, which was very, very interesting.
Mm.
So
Wonderful.
when we came to Abu Dhabi, she decided to kind of call it a day. So she's
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
I'm very, very happy with that. I'm very privileged to have her at home. To be honest,
Oh, no,
very,
that's lovely.
very beautiful woman.
I'm sure. I have seen a picture of your family. They are gorgeous. I can remember landing in Oman when Lottie, who's now nearly 34, was 18 months old. And I thought, oh, it's also alien was the word I used for it, because it just, apart from the fact that the heat just hits you like a wet blanket, the whole thing is just so different culturally. But then, oh my goodness, then, you settle in and have an absolute ball. So, Andrew,
Generally,
Stotts, are you called Stotts across the board, or is in your work? What's your...
it's a kind of a mix, really. I have a very long name, so obviously Andrew Stotter-Brooks is
Yes.
his name. When I was at school, uh, teachers could they sort of obviously shortened my name because Stotter-Brooks was quite a mouthful. So that's where I started out. It was Stotts, stop running. When I first started work, I was called Mr. S, and pretty much from there, it's a mix. It depends if I'm in trouble. If my wife calls me Andrew. The only people on the planet who call me Andy are my two brothers. No one calls me Andy apart from that.
Mm,
So it's kind of either Andrew or
mm,
Stotts. But
mm,
generally, if I'm in trouble, it's Andrew. And
mm.
if it's a more kind of like informal conversation, it's Stotts. Yeah.
So when you are walking out onto to stage or to do some public speaking,
Hmm.
you're introduced as Andrew Stotter-Brooks?
Yeah, typically, I think they call me all Akka. Yeah, so Andrew Stotter-Brooks or Akka Stotts. Yeah.
I
Apart,
like that, Aka Stotts. And so when the very first time you stepped out on stage to a
hmm,
big audience,
yeah.
what did you talk about and how did it feel?
It would have probably been leadership or something around kind of leadership development. The feeling hasn't changed even now. I've done many hundreds of those kind of events, and it's utter terror, utter terror. I think is the
Oh, I'm
word.
so glad to hear that, because I know that, yes, yeah.
It's utter terror.
But
Yeah,
I can remember 8 years ago, and he's had several since, Robbie Williams documentaries on him. And I can remember in the first instance when he went solo, and he used to be physically sick
yeah,
before going out on stage with the nerves and terror. And he had some counselling, and he was he would, before he stepped out, he would go 1, 2, 3, rock star, and click his fingers, and that would set the counselling, that would set his mind to be able to go out and perform, because he's an incredible performer.
he is
Um,
amazing.
how in your So when you're speaking, obviously learning and development, and what I do with the mental toughness and the stories, and is quite an intense and not exactly funny, but we can make it funny by being self-effacing and without overdoing it, but just turning it into something that's like, it's like my daughter said to me. She was actually quite cross with me about this latest, the incident earlier, because I
Yeah.
hadn't told them that I was going to be a witness and what had happened, and she said, "You make some fucking weird decisions, mummy,
Ah,
sometimes."
ah,
So I was given a real talking to. But I actually turned it into, I did a good thing. I was a witness. Again, it was because I was the victim. Although, I never felt like a victim, because having immersed myself in mental toughness, I stood strong all the way through. And so it wasn't pleasant. But the experience of being a witness in court was the abuse you get from the defense lawyer should not be allowed. And that's another thing that I want to try and, actually bring awareness of, because if I had been a woman who, obviously so many of them will be very vulnerable, very fragile, and being abused all over again, they can be so easily bullied, badgered, and manipulated. Those were the three words that I used at this defense lawyer. And it's not right. It's absolutely wrong. And so, I just think that what I do has a great element of seriousness and gravitas to it, but it's the humor. I'm naturally Tiggerish. I am known as quite funny, but it's how you are a naturally humorous, you know, person. How do you bring humor into your learning and development talks? I'd love to know.
I think it's keeping it quite anecdotal. I think people love to have, they love to hear
Ah,
real experiences,
yes,
and and particularly they love to hear when it's kind of hasn't gone quite to plan.
yes,
People,
yes.
there's there's a lot. I mean, also, I think teaching is a great educator. I mean, I think that's really important. So the more that I've got a really good friend called James, and I do a lot of work with James, and he says you're just like an encyclopedia, Andrew. I said I think I possibly am an encyclopedia on business, because he says you just can bring out these kind of business tools, these business models, and these kind of like these Boston matrices, and you just can rattle them off, bang, 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 bang.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and I said, how have you managed to learn all that stuff? And I said, because I'm actually, I think what I'm particularly good at is teaching in a simple way that people understand. So when you teach something repeatedly and you can understand it and you can make it simple for people,
Mm,
that's a kind of a great gift. And then if
mm,
you can actually apply it to real examples and real kind of like life experiences,
mhm,
it sort
mm,
of
mm,
brings it to life. And if you can
mm,
make it funny, it's great
mm,
as well. I think
mm,
as one of my great desire, I'd love to be a stand-up comedian. I
mhm.
don't know whether I think
Scary.
that would be scary. I know, but I think I could probably do it
Mm,
if I had the content. Yeah, because I can definitely deliver a line. So I think that's an important thing. But it's
okay.
when you've
Yeah.
covered content repeatedly, in different continents and different countries, you know the story so well, so you sort of know when to hit the
Yes.
punchline. If that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 So, do you have, please, a couple of top tips or one major takeaway that our audience would really benefit from hearing?
I think my top tip would definitely be, again, just remember that humans need respect. I think you can't really go far wrong with that. So they need respect. They need to be heard. They need to be acknowledged. They need to be remembered. And I think
Mm,
it's those constant sort of micro relationships
mm,
that
mm,
really really really
mm,
works. I
mm,
think also it's helping. It's understanding what people need from you. The amount of time that I always think is so important. Trying to understand what people need is so
mm,
critical.
mm, mm.
I run an activity we do a lot of fun with, like trying to sell me pens, and it staggers me how many people will try and sell me a pen, but they won't understand what my need is for the pen. So they'll only just be saying, "Well, it's a black biro, it's a beautiful pipe pen," and they don't care about what I need from the pen.
Yeah, yes, and
Then just
how you're going to use it, and
tell me what
yeah,
tell me what you're going to use the pen for, Andrew. Tell me why it's important to you.
yeah,
If you ask me those kind of questions, then of course I can give you lots of information about what I'm looking for in the pen, or the phone, or the computer, or the jacket, or
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.